Okay, let's talk about coping strategies. And I've brought in the graphical imagery that I had in the session on mental health. So, okay, I'm not going to go over the details again here, but here we've got the tendency for there to be potential mental health problems by age. We've got the higher cost of mental health related medication in Northern Ireland compared to Wales, Scotland and England. We've got the highest suicide rates by men compared to women in Northern Ireland, and we've got the idea that the tendency towards suicide goes up in relation to lower socioeconomic status. So basically, the poorer someone is, the more likely the suicide is to potentially occur. Now again, guys, can I just stress to you that I do not consider myself an expert on these things. I'm going to be reporting to you the coping strategies that apparently some people use to try and deal with mental health, and that's my job to report those things to you. I do not consider myself to be someone who can comment specifically on these things. So it's a general commentary. So if someone's experiencing a mental health problems, what might they choose to do in order to try and remedy that? Or how are they going to try and cope with that? So there's a couple of things, and a lot of these are quite destructive behaviours, so just be aware of that. So someone might turn to using drugs. So there seems to be an association between mental health problems and problematic drug use. And I use the term problematic drug use because, of course, there are people that will enjoy, a glass of beer and it's balanced and it's that sort of thing, or whatever it happens to be. But what people might do is they might have a tendency to turn towards stimulants, and they might have a tendency to turn towards sedatives. Sedatives, in some ways, these almost do the opposite impact of one another. Stimulants increase kind of mental activity, and sedatives decrease it. Okay, so people might use drugs in different ways to try and, I guess it's a form of self-medication. Something else that people might do, and I've mentioned this already, people might turn to alcohol. And the word I want you to concentrate here on is excessive, and people might turn to excessive alcohol use in an attempt to, as it were, to I guess to some degree deal with the pain that they're experiencing. It's hard for me to know, but there seems to be a strong relationship between alcohol misuse and people who are experiencing mental health problems. So that seems to be a coping strategy. Another one would be denial. Simply denying that the problem is there and not getting help for the problem and not seeking the right things to do. And again, guys, this is a really grave thing I'm going to say here, but some people may turn to self-harm. Now, I want to be crystal clear here. I do not in any way consider myself an expert on this. I'm merely reporting this to you. Another point, we might expect someone to, or it might be possible that an individual will ignore, and we've mentioned denial already, or deny that the feelings are there. Okay, so they might simply deny that they're feeling that way. Okay, so someone might, be quite clearly presenting behaviours of someone who's got a problem, a mental problem, but they might simply deny that those things are existence and ignore that they're there. They probably believe that they're not there even. And people will tend to avoid the problem. Okay, and I think this comes back as well to avoiding problem. I think this comes back to the substance use of drugs and alcohol, because if you avoid the problem, this is one way of doing that, right? You basically intoxicate. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. One might intoxicate, and therefore the problem seems to go away temporarily, but of course it's still there. And then finally, guys, someone might experience excessive working. And when I planned this lesson, I have to say that as someone who does really go towards the workaholic in my life, this is something to reflect on for me, that excessive working could be a coping strategy of dealing with personal problems and dealing with mental problems. So I hope that's a reasonable way of presenting that to you. Ultimately, this is the key information. We've got some data here which is kind of interesting, when you have to teach something like this, I guess I don't want to be sort of too twee or cliche or whatever about this, but I'll just say to you guys, be well, be happy, expect life to be good, and hopefully this is a useful insight for all of us to reflect on some of these things and perhaps these behaviours that we may or we may not see in the world that's around us. And maybe there are things that we can be more aware of going forward, that if we see these kinds of behaviours, it might be to do with someone who's actually really struggling. So with that in mind, I wish you a very good day, good evening, good night, wherever you are.